order of operations, some people might know it as Pemdas. So if you've never heard of Pemdas, there's an easy way to remember it somebody come up with. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally is the first letter of each word. But in math, it stands for parentheses, exponent, multiply, divide, add, subtract. Now, the normal misconception that I see people doing wrong in my class is they think that because M comes before D, so therefore multiply comes before divide, that they have to do all their multiplication before they do any division. That would be incorrect. So, something they don't tell you, or that people don't remember, multiply and divide is equal with each other. They have to be done from left to right. Has to be. So I'll give you an example. So if you did this incorrectly and you multiplied first, which would be 3 times 5, so it'd be 15, you'd have 15 divided by 15, which is 1, and you get the wrong answer. If you work the leftmost problem first, you'd have 15 divided by 3, which is 5, and then that gets multiplied by this 5, which is 25. So completely different answer if you work it from left to right than doing your multiplication before division. Now, adding and subtracting is similar. I tell people to go ahead and work it left to right. There are rules that let you work it out of order. But if you don't remember those on the test, you can get confused and get problems wrong. So I always tell people just go ahead and work it left to right. That way you can just remember everything gets worked left to right. You do all your multiplication, division left to right, then you do all your adding and subtracting left to right. So here's a prime example. Now here's where people go wrong with this problem. They want to do what they think is easiest instead of doing it from left to right. So when they look at this, I don't know why, but they put blinders on and they just look at it like that. 3 plus 4. So they think, I'll just do 3 plus 4 first because that's easy. I know how to add. And they get 7. And then they come over here and they do 10 minus 7 and they get 3. And that would be the incorrect answer. The reason why you're getting the incorrect answer is because you're treating this like 3 when it's not really 3. You have to treat it like it's a negative 3 because there's a minus in front of it. So if you did it out of order, you'd have to treat it like negative 3 plus 4, which would be 1. But if you just go ahead and do it left to right, it's easier. 10 minus 3 is 7. 7 plus 4 is 11. Now there's something else up here that people don't tell you, and I've heard it called Permdos, but for some reason everybody that I talk to always learns it Pemdas. So Permdos adds an R after the E, and the reason why they do that is because they include roots in there. So it's actually exponents and roots. Now there is a reason why they don't put roots in, and that is because in algebra, roots are actually turned into exponents. So if you had something square root of 25, it would actually be 25 to the 1/2. You don't have to worry about that on the GED or the tape test. So you're not going to have any fraction exponents. So that's why I go ahead and write roots. So parentheses are always first, then exponents and roots, then multiplying and dividing left to right, and then last adding and subtracting from left to right. So let me just give you one big example of all of those in play at once. So let's say we had all of that. Now it seems like a lot to tackle at once. That's why people come up with the rules for Pemdas, so to let you more easily attack it in the correct order. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is don't try to do more than one thing at once, especially if you're just getting used to this. Once you get used to it, you realize sometimes you can do 2 steps in one, but for now we're just going to do 1 step. So parentheses first, so that's this first. So the only thing you should do is add 10 plus 4. Whenever you get down to one number and there's nothing else touching the parentheses, you can drop the parentheses. So I'm going to bring down everything else untouched. Now, if you would have went ahead and done the exponent here, it wouldn't have changed your answer. But you never know that, so it's better just do it in order. So the next on the list is exponents and roots. So 4 squared. Now, if you haven't watched my exponent video, you need to go watch that, and it will help you with Pemdas quite a bit, because I'm not going to spend time doing exponents since there's a whole video about them. But that means 4 times 4, which is 16. Then I'm going to bring everything down exactly how it's written. So the only thing that changed there is 4 squared turned into 16. Next, I'm going to do, since everything that's left is multiplying, dividing, adding, subtracting, I'm going to do my multiplying and dividing left to right. Now, if you did this first, it's not going to affect anything. And actually, since these are separated, I'm just to save room, I'm going to do both of them in 1 step. So 14 divided by 7 is 2. Put minus 6. Now, I'm not going to put plus 3 because the 3 is going to get multiplied by the 16. So you might have to do some scratch work off to the side. You won't have a calculator for these. So 3 times 16 will be 48. And it's going to be positive 48 because you have a positive number and a positive number. So plus 48. Now, you have to know your integer rules. So you would need to have already watched my integer subtracting negative numbers, positive and negative numbers video first. So 2 minus 6 is negative 4 plus 48. So negative 4 plus 48 ends up being 44 as your final answer. That seems like a lot of steps, but there's a lot of stuff to do. There's a few areas that you can skip steps. Like I said, you could have combined these 2 steps, but I wouldn't advise combining too many steps, because the more you try to do in 1 step, the more chance you have of getting something wrong. Now that's what you're going to be able to do at the end. Let's do some easy ones for right now. So pretty easy, 3 terms. Parentheses first, 16 plus 4. Drop the parentheses. Divide by 5. So 20 divided by 5 is 4. Now, this can confuse people too, because they get that rule in their mind left to right, and they think, okay, well, if I just work the whole problem left to right, then I'll get it correct. And that's not right. You still got to follow Pemdas. You got to do all your multiplying and divided before you even start adding and subtracting, unless it's in parentheses. Parentheses basically let you break the rules. So since there's no parentheses here, I see a lot of people try to do 9 plus 3 is 12, times 4 is 48. And that would be incorrect. You've got to do 3 times 4 first. Then you add your 9, and you end up with 21. Okay. Now sometimes this can get people, and sometimes they can actually get it correct on accident because they just go ahead and write 6 minus. Okay? That's not necessarily correct. What you need to do is wait and see what sign you're going to have. Now in this case it's going to be minus because a -2, and this is where that other video will help you, but I tell people in Pemdas, algebra, whatever you want to say, you have to be able to switch back and forth between a negative and a minus. People think that they're completely different. They are the same thing. The only difference is what kind of problem you're doing. So if you're doing a multiplication problem, it's a negative. If you're doing a subtraction problem, it's a minus. There's no difference, okay? So -2 times +5 is going to give you negative, and that's when I would write minus 10, okay? Then you need to know your integer rules to get -4. And I don't have time to go over integer rules. You need to watch that video. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. So I will see people write 10 minus because they see 10 minus, and then I'm going to deal with this over here. That's not the right way to go about that. You just need to write 10, and then you need to look at what you're doing. So ignore the 10 now that you've gotten it written down. So you've got -4 times -2. Negative times a negative is going to be a positive. So when you come down here, it's actually +8 instead of -8 or -8, which just adds complexity that you don't need. So then you just add those together and you end up with that. Now there's something that is called nested parentheses. I didn't give you any worksheets on it because I haven't really seen it that much, but if you see a nested parentheses, it just means a parenthesis within a parenthesis. So that would be a nested parentheses. All that's saying is that within these parentheses, there's another set of parentheses that you need to do first. So the first thing you would do is 4 plus 3. Now, since you're not down to one number, you still need to bring these outer parentheses down like that. But you still need to bring down your times 2 and your +8. So now you do 7 times 2, which is 14. Now you can drop the parentheses, +8, 14 plus 8 is 22. I also didn't do any like this, but you could run into something on the test like this. You can have a square root, and you can have multiple things inside the square root, like, for example, that. Don't try to take the square root of 15 and then take the square root of 10 and then add them together. That won't work. You've got to treat the inside like it's in parentheses. So 15 plus 10 is what you would do first. Oops, it's supposed to be a square root. And then you would take the square root of 25. Again, there's a video on this, so I'm not going to go over that, but square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. That's something you're going to need to know how to do in your head, because you're not going to get a calculator on these more than likely. You could have division problems. So you could have something like that. If you have a fraction or a division problem, however you want to call that, same thing. Work everything on the top and everything on the bottom before you divide. Okay, the division line is the last thing that you want to do. So you follow PEMDAS on the top. So you'd add your 4 and your 2 first. and you could drop your parentheses. Then you would do your 5 times your 6 next. And then the last thing you would do is divide your 30 by your 10. That's it, you're done. So let's look at some of these worksheets. Okay. I did not check my printer settings before I printed these, so these are going to be way too big. That's okay. You can't even see number 6. So we're just going to do one anyway. I'll have to change my percentage that they get blown up next time I print. So these are the easiest ones, I think. Yeah, there's 3 different levels. So no parentheses, no exponents. So you just need to follow your Pemdas. So multiplying and dividing are done first. So start on your left. 17 times 24 is the first thing you do. Now these aren't going to be easy. You're going to have to do them off to the side. 7 times 4 is 28. 14, 16, then 4 and 2. Add those together. 408. Usually you're not going to have numbers that big on the GED that you have to do out by hand, but it's good practice. So next you would do your division. 408 divided by 8 goes in there 5 times. That's going to be 40. Goes in there 1 time. So it's 51 minus 4. And then just subtract those. 47. Okay. Next one, you got parentheses. So do what's in parentheses first. This time we have 2 sets of parentheses. So 35 plus 15 is 50. If you have to do that to the side, that's fine. Bring down your divided by. 6 minus 4 is 2. And then the last thing you do is division. 50 divided by 2 is 25. And then the last sheet will be exponents. So parentheses first. So 62 minus 2 is 60. Bring down your divided by, your 6 minus 2 squared. Next thing is exponents. So 2 squared is 4. And that's not because 2 times 2 is 4. That's because 2 2's is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. Those get multiplied twice. You never multiply times the exponent. Next, you got division and subtraction. So you divide first. 60 divided by 6 is 10. Bring down minus 4. Subtract. And you get 6. All your answers are on the second sheet, so you can check yourself on all of those. That's the end of the video.